Hi, this is Craig with Evolve. Well, I want to talk about pricing. Pricing is one of the most important decisions that a salon can make. The reason why it's so important is because it determines your profitability, it positions your salon in the marketplace, and it also helps with stylist retention and recruitment. The reason why I say it helps with stylist retention and recruitment, one of the things that is known is instinctually when a stylist is looking to switch salons, they immediately look at the price that the salon can charge because they understand that there's a direct relationship to the prices that they're charging in the income that they can produce. So pricing has a really, really important thing on how recruitment happens from a stylist standpoint. One of the things I want to go over today really has to do with how do I at least establish the minimum pricing, because you can charge as much as you want. But really, this particular program is more about, okay, what are the baseline metrics that you should be using to establish pricing? So the first thing in reference to pricing is pricing from Evolve standpoint should be the same per minute regardless of the service that's being done. This is one of the key things that we see ongoing where mistakes are constantly being made in reference to pricing. You want to make sure that if you're pricing at $1 a minute, for math purposes, making math easy, if you're taking 45 minutes for a haircut, then it should be $45. If they're taking an hour for a color, for a single process color, it should be $60. You want to make sure that the stylist is generating the same income per hour regardless of the service that they're doing. And that's one of the key things in reference to pricing, because if your pricing is not correct amongst all the services, what instinctually ends up happening is the stylists naturally only sell the services that they actually earn the most amount of money with. And that's what you don't want to discourage them from doing other service. For instance, one of the things that absolutely killed about 4% of the average stylist income was the pricing on permanent waves. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my soapbox about permanent waves and the importance of them. But what happened is a lot of the reasons why permanent waves became less and less dominant is because stylists stopped talking about it. And the reason why they stopped talking about it, when you really got down to the core and you started asking the questions, was that they would invariably, stylists would say, well, I can do 2 haircuts in the same amount of time and make more money, or I could do a cut and a color in the same amount of time and make more money, or they would constantly be comparing the pricing of a permanent wave to other services where they would make more money. And the biggest challenge with that is you're not taking care of the client's needs when you do that. See, what we want to make sure is we want to make sure that the pricing, the stylist earns the same amount regardless, so they can really focus on what the client needs. So the first thing is, in reference to pricing, you want to make sure that your menu, depending on the amount of time that it takes per services, that you're charging the same amount per service for each stylist regardless of which service is being done. It's all based on price per minute. Now, in the level systems of the pricing, because we recommend a 5-level system, and we have other videos that go through that, but in reference to the leveling system, what we recommend is that in the level, each stylist gets the same price per minute in that particular level. When they move to the next level, they would get a higher price per minute. But the pricing per services are always the same per minute, so it all has to do with the longevity. Now, here's the caveat to this. If you have a slow stylist or a newer stylist, they can't be charging more just because they're slow. That doesn't make any sense. So what happens is you have to establish a baseline metrics of where the minimum price should be. In the way that there's 2 ways to do that. One is through identifying the price per product cost, or identifying the price per expense per hour. So I'm going to go through those 2 quick examples, and we're going to kind of walk through them really quickly. And if you have any questions, you can come to our pricing seminars and learn how to truly establish a full pricing menu in our workshops or our seminars. So when you're looking at, let's use hair color for example. When you're looking at establishing a minimum price for a base color hair color, what you want to do is you want to take your application cost and you want to divide it by 0.08. See, product cost should not exceed 8% of sales. So what you want to do is you want to kind of work this backwards. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what the baseline should be in your particular salon, remember, we want pricing to be the same per minute regardless of the service. So let's go to something that has a product cost. Let's look at your basic retouch color. So if your retouch color has a product cost of, say, $3.50, that could be average, I don't know, $3 or $4. Let's use $3.50. What you would do is you would take $3.50 and divide it by 0.08, which would give you somewhere about $43, $44, $45, somewhere right around there. That is your baseline minimum price that you should be charging in your salon for hair color. Now, if your product cost happens to be more than that, if it happens to be $4 or $5, you do the same exact example. You basically make sure that it's 8% of sales. Now, if you're looking to affect profitability, if you're looking to affect cash flow, you can use a smaller metric. So you can basically bring it down to 7 or 6%. All of a way of saying that pricing determines profitability. The industry standard is your product cost shouldn't exceed 8% of sales. Now, depending on color line, some of you are upwards of 10, 12, 15% of sales. That is the problem. That's why you need to make sure that your pricing is in line so that your product cost makes sense for what you're charging. But if you're looking to establish that minimum price, and I'm talking about just strictly minimum price, you would look at your product cost, and we recommend 8%. So you would take whatever your product cost is for a service, divide it by 8%, and that should be the minimum that you would charge. Now, when you're looking at pricing for an expense per hour, what you want to do is you really want to kind of identify, okay, what are your total income producing hours in a month? Now, I know that's a kind of a big topic, so let me kind of walk you through how you would figure out total income producing hours. What you do is you look at how many hours you're open in a week. You would take how many full-time service providers you have. So if you have 2 part-time service providers, that equals 1 full-time service provider. We would multiply it by 4.3 weeks in a month. There's 4.3 weeks in a month. So you take your total number of hours you work in a week, multiply it by your service providers, and then you would multiply that by 4.3 weeks. At that point, whatever number you get from there, what we want you to do is we want you to multiply it by 90% or 0.9. And the reason for that is we're giving about 10% for downtime. So stylists going to the bathroom, lunches, things of that nature. So that's how you would figure out your total income producing hours in a month. So what you would do at that point is you would identify, okay, how many hours are you booked? So one of the great things in a lot of the software programs that you're using is they'll actually tell you what your productivity number is or what your productivity percentage is. From the computer software standpoint, that productivity number is traditionally based on how many available hours were sold versus how many were actually sold. Now, from an Evolve standpoint, we don't look at that as productivity. We actually look at it as efficiency. But you want to figure out, okay, what is the efficiency in the salon? So what you would do is you would look at the actual number of hours that are booked divided by your total income producing hours, and that will give you your salon efficiency. The next step to this is you have to figure out, okay, what are your salon's expenses in a month? What are your total dollar amount of expenses in a month? So the way that you would figure this out is you would look at your profit and loss statement, you go under your total expenses, and what we recommend is you subtract out the cost of goods for retail. So the way that you would do this, because I've looked at so many different profit and loss statements for salons, and you don't have a lot of consistency there's not a well-established industry standard. Now for Evolve salons, we've established a standard, but if you're not an Evolve salon, traditionally what ends up happening is you allow your accountants to basically determine the setup of your profit and loss statement, and they're determining the setup strictly just for you to pay your taxes, which is not good for analysis purposes. So let me give you kind of a quick example. Look at your retail sales, okay? Multiply your retail sales by 50%. That will give you your cost of goods for retail. And you look at your profit and loss statement for a month, and you take your total expenses minus your cost of goods for retail, and that will give you your salon expenses. Once you have your salon expenses, what you would do is you would take your salon expenses and you divide it by your total number of income producing hours. And what that will tell you is what your expenses are in a month per hour. And that's an important metric for you to understand, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish, okay, what are our expenses per minute? So once you have your expenses per hour for the services, you would take that number and divide it by 60 minutes, and that will give you your expense per minute. At that point, what you're going to do is you're going to be looking at, because you're going to understand that you have a certain expense per minute that you're open, and you want to make sure that you're covering that expense per minute with additional profits. So the way that you would look at it, the price of a service should be your expense per minute divided by your salon's efficiency. And I talked about the fact that your salon efficiency is your actual number of hours booked divided by your total income producing hours. But the salon efficiency, and it's different semantics, so I want you to understand, because we do not believe productivity is about how many hours are sold. Productivity is about dollar amounts that you can generate. So we use the term efficiency. So in your software programs, if you're looking at your productivity number, that is equivalent to our vocabulary of the efficiency. So you would take your expense per minute divided by your efficiency. Then you would multiply it by the timing of the service, however long a service takes. So if it's a haircut, you would multiply it by 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And then you would divide that by your desired profit. So what you're trying to do at this point is you would take your desired profit and you would actually have it 1 minus your desired profit. I'm sorry, I said you would divide it by your desired profit before. What I want you to do is I want you to divide this by 1 minus your desired profit. So if you have a desired profit of 10%, you would take your expense per minute divided by efficiency times the timing of your service divided by 90%. And that's how you would end up figuring out your minimum pricing for a particular service. Now, the recommended guidelines are, if you're going to be doing it from a break-even standpoint, you want your minimum price to have a break-even of a 0% profit. Okay? So that should be the absolute minimum that you would charge. So when you go back to the pricing formula, you do your expense. It's essentially your expense per minute divided by your efficiency times your the timing of that particular service. And you wouldn't include any of the profit in there. That would be the minimum desired pricing for that. Another way of looking at it, because we were talking about salon's efficiency, if you have a hard time figuring out what your salon's efficiency is, the minimum price should be this with the salon efficient at 50%. So in the pricing formula, say we're doing a 45-minute haircut, you would take your expense per minute divided by 50% efficiency times the 45-minute haircut. Or you could add your 10 to 15% profit in it. So these are the different guidelines. So the minimum pricing, see, we recommend your pricing should include profitability included in it. So if you do it that way, the way that the formula would work again is you would take your expense per minute divided by your efficiency times your timing of the service. So say it's the haircut price, I would say it's the haircut at 45-minute timing, and then you would take it divided by 1 minus the 10% profit that you're looking for, or you would divide it by 90% or 0.9. So these are different guidelines on how to figure out pricing. So I know I went through a lot in reference to the pricing per minute, but this is what I want you to think about. Your prices should be established off of your expenses. And the biggest mistake that most salons make is they'll call other salons to find out what the other salons are charging. The challenge with that is each one of you has different values that you're bringing to the table. For instance, if you have gourmet coffee that you serve, if you serve specific types of drinks, if you have parking spaces for your clients versus street parking, if you're on the ground level versus on the second or third floor, All of these need to be into consideration on what your pricing is, because you as the salon owner, those are premium expenses that you have that other salons might not have. That's why you can't just call around to other salons and see what their pricing is, and you call 3 or 4 different salons, see what their pricing is, and you take the average of it. You have to look at your expenses, figure out how much you need to generate per minute to cover your expenses for a desired profit, and that becomes the minimum pricing that you would charge. You can always charge more, but you want to create a baseline minimum pricing for you to charge. So I went over charging the same price per minute regardless of the service. We also went over pricing, a minimum pricing based off of the product cost, and we also went off the minimum pricing based off of your expense per hour in a month. So those are 3 different ways to establish pricing. I hope this video helped out. Find us on Facebook or at evolvesalonsystems.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day.